Let's get a word with Duncan Gardham, firstly, security analyst and international terrorism expert. Duncan, it's good to gauge your views on these things. We were asking the question at the beginning, how should the West respond to the Islamist terror threat? And of course, by definition, the Islamist terror threat isn't one sort of army that are in a specific location. We've seen it over here, we've seen it across Europe, and of course yesterday we saw it in Australia. Individuals that sign up to this, whatever ideology one wants to title it as, but these are individuals, which makes it very difficult, of course, for any authority, any government, any intelligence agencies to specifically track.
Yes, it does. There's an increased ability to track these people in one respect. They are using the internet more openly than they were previously. So a lot of the stuff that's picked up is people being quite open on the internet about their views, and those views becoming increasingly violent. And we I particularly see a lot of cases in which the security services have kept a really close eye on individual groups and individual postings and people that are encouraging violence. These aren't political people. These are people that are advocating jihad, and they're advocating it for a particular offensive cause, and sometimes they are targeting Jewish individuals. On the downside, as you rightly point out, is that these aren't large networks that we were used to a decade or more ago. These people aren't necessarily communicating or meeting up, and we can't see them getting together in each other's houses so that we can see that plot gradually building. What we're trying to do, or what the security services are trying to do, is piece together individual remarks that are made online and then try and infiltrate into those groups and become members of those groups quite often, in order to work out whether they are moving from just talking the talk into potentially walking the walk.
And what's interesting, and something we sadly have seen before, is one of the killers, the son, Naveed Akram, did come to the attention of the Australian authorities some 6 years ago. They did look into his case. They spent 6 months investigating it, and they concluded at the end that he was not deemed an imminent threat to the public. But there was clearly something there that suggested this person was of interest.
Yes, and obviously they were right, because he wasn't an imminent threat, because this is 6 years later that it's actually come to fruition. And it would be a mistake, I think, to imagine that Australia hasn't had a problem with extremism. It absolutely has. And a notorious propagandist, member of ISIS, a guy called Neil Prakash, was one of the individuals churning out an awful lot of their English language propaganda that went global to the English-speaking world. And they also, Sydney in particular, started to develop an extremism problem. We saw one or two individuals influenced over here, particularly a 15-year-old boy who was encouraging an individual in Melbourne to go out and execute soldiers at an Anzac parade in Australia. So we see that kind of global reach of ISIS, if you like. And although ISIS has always been arm's length from Hamas, they're not the same organizations at all. ISIS has sought to capitalize to a certain extent on the brutality of the Israeli response in Gaza, to try and stir up emotions around potential recruits in the West.
What's your response, Duncan, to this idea that states such as ours and Australia, countries such as ours, recognising Palestine as a country and as a nation and all that goes with it? There's many people out there today, and yesterday these voices were very quick to say, we've emboldened these extremists by doing that. Are those two points related?
Not really, no. I mean, I think we need to draw a line really between people who go out and protest in support of the Palestinian cause and what we're seeing here, which is jihadis really. And jihadis have a complicated history, which really these are individuals who are very often losers, if you like. They're very much aware they've become religious, but they're aware they're not going to paradise because their lifestyle just hasn't supported it, and they're seeking a shortcut to achieve those ends. They don't want to be normal Muslims. They don't want to go to the mosque and pray as anybody normally might do, or give to charity, or look after the less fortunate. What they want to do is go out and kill people because they think that will get them a shortcut to paradise, particularly if they're killed in doing so. These are not people who are marching through the streets. People marching through, they look down on people who are marching through the streets.
Yeah.
And they believe in violence as the answer.
And to back to where we began on this point, Duncan, how do we respond then as the West, as a collective, if you like?
Well, it's complicated actually, Ian, because I know that the security services are quite worried about this increase in potential violence around the Gaza cause, if you like. They are worried that it's beginning to reach traction online, and these are things that we have to keep a close eye on, because the truth of the matter is we are an international society now, whether we like it or not, and the internet has done that to people. But I would point out actually, and if you're Jewish, one of the things that you might be feeling at the moment is that your society, your religion is under attack. But many of the cases that I've been doing over the last couple of years have actually been far right young people trying to attack Jewish people, or attack synagogues, or firebomb synagogues. And actually, we've got to keep an eye out on all extremists, because they're coming from all sides, and we really do have to keep our eyes open and keep our eyes aware of what's on the internet, but also maybe what our friends and neighbours are saying to each other.
Indeed. Duncan, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Duncan Gardham, security analyst and international terrorism expert. Let's speak to Keith Fraser, founder of the Israel Solidarity Movement. Keith, good afternoon to you. It was a horrendous day for Australia, a horrendous day for the Western world. But a horrendous day for Jewish people in particular, because this felt, well, it clearly was targeted at Jews. The timing of it, Hanukkah and all that goes with it, was not a coincidence. This was, getting right into people being out in public and celebrating their faith and everything that Hanukkah brings. But of course, it's not the first time we've seen this. And, we know there were sort of, on a smaller but nonetheless still fatal way, there were sort of echoes of October 7th in what happened here in Australia yesterday. Is there ever an answer to why somebody would do this, and how, as we were saying to our last guest, how we respond to it? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Ian. I think there's two things to think of. The first thing that it immediately smacked me in the face of was that there was a father and son. You may recall on October the 7th, when a Hamas terrorist slaughtered, I think, something like 10 innocents on that day, and phoned home in Gaza and spoke to his father and said, "I've just killed 10 Jews." And the father said, "Allah Akbar," and he was so proud of his son. You ask what we can do. We really need to get a grip of the problem within, unfortunately, large swathes of the Muslim community. Only 24% of British Muslims in a poll believed that Hamas committed murder and rape on the 7th of October. We also have seen in polls that a third of British Muslims want Sharia law adopted in this country. These are not people who are friends of the West, who appreciate our freedoms. And you mentioned, I think earlier to your earlier guest, about this notion about recognizing Palestine. Well, I say, if you recognize Palestine, you get Palestine. You have to understand the whole notion of the PLO, where the whole notion of Palestinian statehood was started by an Egyptian, not a Palestinian, was born in Cairo, Yasser Arafat, the father of the Nazis who slaughtered 6 million Jews and many other innocents. Was not a German called Hitler, he was an Austrian called Hitler. This is the modern day Nazis, I'm afraid. And if we're going to get a grip on this, we have to smell the coffee. There is an issue amongst, I'm afraid to say, not all, but significant swathes of the Muslim community. Mehdi Hassan, the very far left, and I believe anti-Semitic Muslim commentator, said many years ago in a piece, he said that in Muslim homes, anti-Semitism is a guilty little secret. So I'm afraid that says it all.
He would dispute, of course, he's not here to defend himself, he would dispute that he himself is an anti-Semite.
Of course he would dispute that, but I would argue his focus and his sole focus on much of his programming is dedicated towards Israel and Jews, and rather than the real atrocities going on around the world.
And I was just going to sort of almost tie in with, as you were saying, recognising Palestine and Australia. This country has gone ahead with this, and others around the world as well. Plus those marches where, and I mentioned this at the beginning, globalised the Intifada, thrown out liberally around these marches right across the planet almost, but particularly in this country as well. I mean, you haven't got to be Columbo to suggest that might just be part of the problem.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, look, like I've said earlier, if you recognise Palestine, that's what you get. Palestine and all the supporters you see out, they don't really care for the Palestinians, because if they did, they would care about all the Christians, the tens of thousands of Christians slaughtered in Nigeria, all the people slaughtered in Sudan, Yemen, all these other places around the world. Why are they focused on, inverted commas, Palestine? Because Palestine effectively means, and was set up by Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian, for the eradication of the Jewish state. When people call for Palestine to be a state, they mean the eradication of a Jewish one. I'm afraid to say it, and they will argue the contrary, but it is a fact. And the fact is, the proof is in the pudding. The jihadists, to globalize the Intifada mob, and the people who say from the river to the sea, the chap who and his son who carried out this atrocity on the weekend are exactly an example of that. And I would say this, what I mentioned with the father and son, and with the person like the Hamas attacker who phoned home, radicalization, extremism, it comes from the home. It doesn't come only from the internet. It starts from the home. Go on to memory.org, MEMRI.org, and you will see countless videos of sermons given in mosques where they are calling for violence. This has to be dealt with.
Yeah. On that point, Keith, some real points to ponder on. Thank you for your time, sir. What a grim discussion this has turned out to be on a Monday afternoon, but it's reflecting the reality of our times and the random nature of this, and the brutality of this, the casual nature of a killing spree, broad daylight on a beach. I think that's almost part of the intent, to pick those innocuous moments. Keith Fraser is the founder of the Israel Solidarity Movement. Thank you to him. Over